Well, if you're all ready then. All right. My parents like to refer to my older siblings as the cautionary tales of our family. As the youngest sibling, whenever they tend to do something they shouldn't do, my parents will look at me, give me a funny look, and say, "Let this serve as a cautionary tale to you, Abigail." And it does. I've learned many valuable lessons from my parents and my older siblings. Now, I won't go into specific details, but to put it rather vaguely, let's say there was an incident with my older siblings taking a really important test, there was a lack of studying, and I'm not saying that they failed, but I totally am. And this is the thought I was faced with when I looked at today's question. Will changes to the college prep exam, the SAT, make the test better? Now, my answer may come quite surprising to you. Now, my answer actually depends on what you're going to define better as. Specifically, my stance on this question is that the test will be easier, and so I suppose you could say that it would become better if you're a future test taker yourself. So the test will be easier, but at the same time, education will be hurt because of this. And that's actually the 2 points I'm going to be examining in order to provide some specificity for my answer. First, we'll look at how specifically the SAT exam has become easier. And then in the latter half of my speech, we'll look at how specifically this is going to impact the education of future college students. But before we look into those points, there needs to be a justification or another reason for why you guys are going to sit here and pay attention to me listen to essentially ranting about the SAT for 7 or so minutes. And the reason why I believe this question is relevant and important to you is because this directly impacts your children and the second generation as a whole. If this test is going to lower the education of your own kids, that's a pretty important thing for you, especially considering that most of your students, as this is a high school competition, are going out of high school and they're getting ready to take the SAT themselves. So that's why I believe that this question is important to you, because if there's going to be sudden changes on your students' test scores, you're probably going to be wondering, what's up with this situation? So let's look to the first part of my answer. We're going to be looking at how specifically this test has gotten easier. Well, as ABC News reported this morning, in fact, they said that they published a list of sample questions taken from the new SAT's formatting. And in my preparation time for this speech, I was looking through the algebra section for these math problems. Now, I'm really bad at math. You can trust me on this one. But I was able to solve these problems. If I can solve the problems to a college examination test with no worry at all, that's a pretty big problem. Yes, I just insulted myself, but this is a pretty big issue. If I'm a freshman and I can solve these college problems, then what is that going to mean? This test has become so much easier due to the amount of people that were failing the college examination tests. But furthermore, some more specific changes were reported by the Huffington Post yesterday morning, and they stated that the College Board released blueprints for the new SAT designs. Among the changes, multiple choice questions will now have fewer possible answers, so as to ensure when students guess, they will be more likely to get the right answer. Another big change is the fact that reading passages are now being made significantly easier to read, and they include a lower vocabulary. These kids are trying to get into college, and they're making the test easier. They're giving them fewer choices for multiple choice answers in the hopes that when they guess, because come on, everyone does it, they'll have a higher chance to get the right answer. And that's a big problem. Specifically, though, the biggest thing that's troubling me about the new SAT exam was reported by a certain source who actually directly looked at the College Board's website. Now, the College Board website explained how the quarter-point reduction for incorrect answers is now being removed, allowing students to guess without penalty. Well, that's good news for me, but not necessarily for education. Now, this leads me specifically into my next point. How exactly is this going to be damaging education? Well, we can already see that the test is being made that much easier, and that's going to incentivize laziness. Specifically, however, the Washington Post tells us earlier in March that one controversial change is the optional essay. Previously, test takers were required to compose a paper. So let's compare this right now. On the former SAT exam, they saw that hundreds of students were failing the test, but they believed the reason behind that was because they had to do so much work. They couldn't simply guess without penalty. They had to actually know the right answer, and they couldn't instead just circle the one that they thought looked good enough to them. But now, that's all been taken away completely, because they want students to be pushed along into college so that they can get out of the parents' houses. Now, this is directly going to hurt everyone's education and the entire second generation of America as a whole, because this is just going to incentivize laziness. This is going to lower the want and the desire to study and thus do well on the test. Furthermore, the Washington Times tell us on April 13th that that future test takers are excited for this easier and simpler format. Well, duh, they're excited for this new and simpler format. If they're failing the test prior, it's being made easy. Of course, we can see that out of a poll of 2,000 future college students, 1,993 of them were excited for the new test format. What the heck is going on here? This is absolutely a bad idea. So in conclusion of this point, how specifically is education being harmed? Well, I believe that Reuters put it best when they told us that the new SAT ultimately requires less work and encourages laziness for future test takers. That right there sums up my stance on this question. So looking back to what that said question was, is the new formatting for the SAT going to hurt people? But specifically, is this going to be a better form of test? Will changes to the SAT college prep exam make the test better? I don't believe so. Sure, the test is going to be easier, but does that make it better? Absolutely not. So looking back to the example I was talking about at the beginning of my speech, my siblings serve as the cautionary tale for me, and my parents make sure to understand that you actually need to study for a test. But due to the new SAT exam, it looks like I don't have to. Thank you very much.